विश्वंदर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्वोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्म पादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठम् अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ I welcome you all to the 21st class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. We have been looking into the question of how an adhikari becomes an adhikari. And we said the adhikari has to meet three criteria. The adhikari must be a mumukshuhu, the adhikari must be a jigyasuhu, and the adhikari must have certain other qualifications. So how does the adhikari become a mumukshuhu? By discovering the problem of samsaraha. And the discovery of the problem of samsaraha is the discovery that the struggle to gain the purnatvam that I am seeking is never ending. It is impossible, futile through the first three purusharthas. When one comes to this point, then one begins to seek this purnatvam directly somehow. And at that point, the Veda Purva tells him that what you are now seeking is moksha, and for this you need to approach Vedanta. So this person becomes a mumukshuhu. But we said it is not enough for this person to become a mumukshuhu. The person should also become a jigyasuhu. And how does he become a jigyasuhu? By coming to know that the root cause of all of my suffering, of all of this samsara struggle, is basically Atma Ajnanam, the self-ignorance. And one comes to this point with the help of Vedanta, because one cannot discover that I am self-ignorant by oneself. Just as the 10th man could not discover that the 10th man is self-ignorant by himself, he needed the help of the passerby. So exactly like the 10th man who was ignorant of his own status of being the 10th man, and he was searching for the 10th man, he was seeking for the 10th man. Similarly, Vedanta points out that you are ignorant of your own nature of being Purnaha. And because of this ignorance, you take yourself to be Apurnaha, and then you go about in search of Purnatva. So when one recognizes this, when one understands this, then one becomes a jigyasuhu, a seeker of knowledge. But then even after one comes to this point, there are some unanswered questions about what is the means of knowledge, what is the knowledge that they're talking about, how to go about gaining it. So, what we say is that this inquiry into pramanas is important. And that's why we went through the inquiry into pramanas. Means of knowledge, the various means of knowledge. And we dismissed all the Laukika Pramanas as being incapable of revealing the Atma, the I, because it is not in the scope of the Laukika Pramanas. And then we said the only Pramana that can reveal the nature of the Atma is the Shabda Pramana. But even there we excluded the Laukika Shabdas, because the Laukika Shabdas are basically carriers of knowledge gained through Laukika Pramanas. And so they are not capable of revealing the nature of the Atma. And that's how we came to the Vedika Shabdas, where the Vedika Shabdas themselves are the revealers of knowledge that cannot be gained through any other means. Pratyakshena va yastu payona buddhyate enam vidanti vedena tasmat vedasya vedata. Then we saw that Vedanta presents itself as a pramana for the Atma Jnanam, as a pramana to reveal the nature of the Atma, to reveal what Brahman is. Vedanto nama Upanishad pramanam tadupakarini sharirika sutradini cha. Vedanto nama Upanishad pramanam. Upanishad, Vedanta refers to the Upanishads that are a pramana for Atma Jnana. Then we looked at the Anubandha Chatushtayam of Vedanta. The Prayojanam is Purnatvam. The Prayojanam is Moksha. Moksha is Purnatvam, fullness, completeness, limitlessness, irrespective of external situations, independently of external situations. Atyantika dukkha nivrittihi paramananda praptischa. This is the prayojanam. Then what is the vishayaha? The vishayaha is this I, the Atma, the absolute reality, Brahman, and Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam. This is the vishayaha. And what is the connection between the vishayaha and the prayojanam? What is the sambandha? This is the third factor of the Anubandha Chatushtaya. Said Vedanta is the pramana and Atma Jnanam is the prama. So there's a prama sambandha. Then what is the connection between the Atma Jnanam and Purnatvam or Moksha? And Atma Jnanam is the sadhana and Moksha or Purnatvam is the sadhya. What is attained? It's attained purely through knowledge. And the fourth factor is the adhikari, about whom we have been discussing all this while. The adhikari is a mumukshu, who is a jigyasu, who now understands the Vedanta is the pramana for the jnanam that he is seeking. Then we address this question about whether this, as we said, that this pramana has to be employed only through shravanam. The pramana is taken up by the guru, and the sentences of Vedanta are analyzed, and the meanings of the words are explained by the guru. And in this process, one understands the relationships between the meanings of the words in the sentences of the Vedanta, that is a Shabda Pramana. And as we said, consistent and systematic study of Vedanta for a length of time under a competent acharya that leads to the rise of Atma Jnanam in a qualified aspirant. So there was this question about whether this results in some kind of a second-hand knowledge that has to be then converted into direct knowledge. One has to know about Brahman and then somehow have to become Brahman through some other practices later. So we said that there are two types of words. There are descriptive words where the words come first and provide a description of something, and then I have to actually experience it in order to understand the descriptive words. Until then, until that experience is had, the descriptive words are not understood. Like, for example, we took the example of the valley of flowers in the Himalayas. But then we said the words of Vedanta are not like that. So the words of Vedanta are introductory words. In case of introductory words, the experience comes first. The experience is already there, but one hasn't understood what the experience is. And the introductory words basically introduce the experience that I'm already having to myself. As in case of the 10th man. The 10th man was already experiencing the 10th man. He was already experiencing what he was seeking. But then what he was lacking was a knowledge that what I am seeking, I already am. So the words, Dashamaha Tvamasi, those words introduced the 10th man to the 10th man. And after that, he didn't have to go about seeking an experience of the 10th man separately. These are introductory words. So similarly, we say the Shabda Pramana Vedanta are introductory words. Why? Because the Samanya Jnanam is already there. I know that I am. But the Vishesha Jnanam of who this I am is missing. And when the Samanya Jnanam is there, but the Vishesha Jnanam is missing, then it leads to a superimposition, an ideal condition for superimposition. And therefore, I start to superimpose all kinds of things on this I am that this I am is not. Like I am such and such, 5 feet 9 inches tall. I was born on such and such a date. I am dark, I am fair, I am happy, I am angry. So in all of this, the I am is there. I very confidently say these things. Why? Because I know that I am. The experience of the I am is already there. If the experience of the I am was not there at all, then I could not even have made a mistake about the I am. Just like if the rope cannot be seen in total darkness, one cannot even mistake the rope for anything. The mistake happens only when partial knowledge of the rope is there. Samanya Jnanam is there. Then I mistake it for a snake. Similarly, I know I am. And that is why I am able to make a mistake about myself. What the Shabda Pramana Vedanta does, it corrects my mistakes that I have been making about myself by revealing the true nature of who this Atma is. We say that the Shravanam produces direct knowledge, aparoksha jnanam. But we said there has to be a qualified aspirant. The seeker must be a qualified seeker. Hence we came to the third question. So with this, we have completed the question of how this adhikari becomes a jigyasuhu and how the adhikari comes to Vedanta. So first he becomes a mumukshuhu, a seeker of moksha. Then he becomes a jigyasuhu, a seeker of knowledge. And then he becomes a shushru-shuhu. Amiji says he becomes a shushru-shuhu, meaning one who is desirous of Shravanam, one who is desirous of listening to Vedanta. So this is the other three phases in the development of the seeker. We have folded this third phase of becoming a Sushrushuhu into the Jigyasu phase itself. We did not list it out separately, but sometimes Swamiji points this out as separately as a third point. That one becomes a Mumukshuhu, then a Jigyasuhu, then a Sushrushuhu. So this person, now we come to the third question. What are these qualifications that this person has to gain? and then how to gain those qualifications. So here we said that this person has now come to the appropriate pramana, which is Vedanta. But if you recall the first knowledge principle, when an appropriate and adequate pramana comes in contact with the prameya, then the knowledge takes place. So the pramana has to operate adequately. The appropriate pramana has to operate adequately. So here we took the example of eyes. When the eyes see an object, the appropriate pramana is there. But if there is some obstruction, like a cataract or dim light, then the eyes cannot see clearly, cannot produce clear knowledge of colors, for example. So similarly, for the spiritual eye, that is Vedanta, which reveals things that are not revealed through other pramanas. For this pramana to operate adequately, there should not be any significant obstructions in the mind of the aspirant, in the mind of the seeker. So then what are these possible obstacles? What are the possible impurities of the mind? We enumerated three of them: malaha, vikshepaha, and ajnanam. So malaha, we said, is papam, basically papam. And that is why in our culture, there is so much emphasis on avoiding papam, because this papam begins to accumulate. This parama purushartha begins to go out of one's range. Moksha and all. What to talk about moksha? Even artha and kamaha, we said, it can give what it is capable of giving only in the presence of dharma. So malaha is this papa, which makes it more difficult for this pramana to operate. In fact, one may not even come to the pramana if there's a lot of malaha. That is the first thing. And we said malaha is reduced by karma yoga. And malaha obstacle is what makes one take to nishiddha karmas. Or if there is excessive attraction to sense objects, etc., all that is because of malaha. This is neutralized through karma yoga. Then the next thing is vikshepaha, preoccupation of the mind. The mind is constantly thinking about one thing or the other, somebody in the family, somebody in the profession. They tend to occupy mind space, tend to dominate the thinking. And such a mind cannot be available for study and contemplation, etc. So this is the second obstacle, and we said it is reduced by upasana yoga. Then there's this third impurity called ajnanam. And ajnanam, as we said, goes only through the study of Vedanta, through Shravanam. Now, a qualified seeker doesn't have to get rid of all these three impurities, because if he got rid of all three impurities, he would be a jnani, and a jnani is not a seeker. So we say that a qualified adhikari just has to neutralize the first two impurities, malaha and vikshepaha. The ajnanam is still there. That is why he is an adhikari. Earlier he was turbulently ignorant. Now he is quietly ignorant. And this quietly ignorant person is the ideal candidate for the study of Vedanta. So he said this condition is known as chitta shuddhi. Reduction of malaha and vikshepaha is chitta shuddhi, inversely proportional, as we said. As mala and vikshepa reduce, chitta shuddhi increases, and so do the qualifications. Now, these qualifications, the benefit that one gets from the study of Vedanta is proportional to the qualifications. So the more qualified one is, the faster one gets it. An Uttama Adhikari, for example, doesn't need much time at all. He does some basic Shravanam. It comes to know the Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam, that is enough. His job is done. Whereas Madhyama and Kanishta Adhikaris, they have to work harder at it. They have to work more. So, we talked about what these four qualifications are. And that is when we came to Tattva Bodha. Tattva Bodha is a primer of Vedanta, an introductory text of Vedanta. So we started to look at some snippets from Tattva Bodha in the last class. Now, I thought that we will look at the first shloka of Tattva Bodha also, that is the Mangala shloka of Tattva Bodha. And if we see that, I have sent it on the WhatsApp, so you can also take a look at it. So it says Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodho Bhidhiyate. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodho Bhidhiyate. So here, the Mangala shlokas are typically done in any Vedantic text by the author in order to invoke the grace of Ishvara, in order to invoke the grace of the Guru Parampara, etc., in order for the work to be completed successfully. This is a tradition. And similarly, for the students who are studying it, saying the Mangala shloka is a way of invoking the grace of Ishvara and the Guru for a successful completion of the study of the text. So since we'll be picking up several snippets, I thought we will look at this also. And there are some other things also I wanted to point out here that is connected to what we have been studying. It starts off with Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva. So the author of Tattva Bodha, this text, as we said, is generally taken to be Adi Shankaracharya. But there is some difference of opinion whether it is Adi Shankaracharya or one of the other Shankaracharyas in the Parampara. Either way, it is a very important text and an important introductory text. So this starts off with a namaskara to Vasudevendra Yogindram. Yeah, Vasudevendra Yogindra. So who is this Vasudevendra Yogindra? There are two ways to look at it. It can be Sri Krishna. Vasudeva. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Sachanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So Vasudeva Sutam Vasudevendra Yogindram. So doing a namaskar to Sri Krishna because he is Ishvara and an avatar of Ishvara. And also a teacher of Vedanta, Guru in the Parampara. He is the Gita Acharya. He is the one who gave us the Bhagavad Gītā. So we are starting with a namaskara. Natva means namaskaram kritva. I am doing namaskara to Vasudevendra Yogindra. And he is the foremost amongst yogis, amongst jnana yogis. That is why he is called Yogindra. So now, doing namaskara to Vasudevendra Yogindra. There is another meaning also possible. That Vasudevendra Yogindra is a name of one of the gurus of the Shankaracharyas. One of the Shankaracharyas. So either way, he is doing namaskara to Ishvara or to his guru. Now, Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva. What kind of Vasudevendra Yogindra? There is an adjective he is using. Jnana Pradam Gurum. Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum. So he is a guru. Vasudevendra Yogindra is a guru. So guru adjective is used. And Jnana Pradam Guru, what type of guru? One who bestows this Atma Jnana upon the student. Jnana Pradam Guru. And for what reason is this text being composed? He says, Mumukshunam Hitarthaya. Mumukshunam, for the sake of mumukshus, for the benefit of mumukshus, Mumukshunam Hitarthaya. And what is the hita for a mumukshu? What is the mumukshu want the most? He wants moksha. So the hita for a mumukshu is the gaining of moksha. How? Through knowledge. So this text is being composed for mumukshus. Tattva bodha abhidhiyate. This text called Tattva bodha is being composed, is being taught. So what is Tattva bodha? Tattva refers to the reality. Atma, Brahman, Tattva. They are all really synonymous. It refers to the absolute reality. The Nitya Vastu, as we talked about in the last class. And Bodha refers to knowledge. So knowledge of the absolute reality. That's what Tattva Bodha is. So this text is teaching the knowledge of the absolute reality. Tattva, or the knowledge of Atma, or the knowledge of Brahman. Now we come back to the Mumukshunam Hitarthaya. You see, the text directly starts off saying, this is being taught for the sake of Mumukshus. It doesn't talk about how this person became a Mumukshu. The text assumes that all of that has happened. And this person is now a Mumukshu who is also a Jigyasuhu. Unless he was a Jigyasu, he wouldn't come to Vedanta. And he has also understood that Vedanta is a pramana. So all of this discussion that we have been having in some case, in a way, is a precursor to this first shloka. Because without the entire discussion about Mumukshuhu, Jigyasuhu, Shushrushuhu, etc., one wouldn't even approach Vedanta and come to the first shloka. So now, what are these qualifications that are talked about here? So we looked at that in the, you can look at the PDF again. Sadhana chatushtayam kim nitya nitya vastu vivekah ihamutrartha phala bhoga viragah shamadhi shatka sampattihi mumukshutvam cheti. So here the four qualifications are talked about. As we saw, Viveka, Vairagya, Shatka Sampattihi, and Mumukshutvam. In short, discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire for this moksha, Mumukshutvam. We saw why these four qualifications, because what we are dealing with here is a mixture of the imperishable and the perishable, a mixture of the real and the unreal, a mixture of the permanent and the ephemeral. It's all mixed up together here. So the Vedanta sadhana can be broadly classified into four. One is, one has to understand what is imperishable and what is perishable. And one has to let go of this clinging to the imperishable, clinging to the perishable. And the third is that one has to develop certain discipline of the mind. And that is important for this pursuit. And the fourth is, and one has to develop a desire for the imperishable, which is mumukshutva. So that is why the ability to do each of these four things is essentially the four qualifications. And the benefit, as we said, is proportional to these qualifications. So let us look at the first qualification that we started off in the last class. Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka Kaha. Nitya Vastuvekam Brahma Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam Ayameva Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. This is introducing the first qualification called Viveka. Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. And we said this Viveka comes from this which dhatu in Sanskrit, which has this meaning of to separate, to rightly understand, to rightly judge something. That is the meaning of this which dhatu. As we saw the example of the diamond merchant who takes this identical mixture of fake and real diamonds, and he takes this diamond and examines it critically. And he says, this one is a fake diamond. This one is a real diamond. So he is doing Viveka there. Similarly, we saw this example of the swan that is able to drink milk alone from a mixture of milk and water. So there is this very intimately mixed up things that are hard to distinguish. And that is why this ability is required to be able to distinguish even when the task is difficult. That is Viveka. Saw the example of the munja grass where one separates the skin on the surface of it to expose what is there inside. One has to do it very carefully to not hurt what is inside. So now, what are we separating from what here? When Tattva Bodha is talking about Viveka, he said it is separation of Nitya Vastu from Anitya Vastu. Nitya Vastu Viveka. This entire universe is in space and time, and as we said, everything here is subject to the onslaught of time. Right from the galaxies to the microbes, everything that is produced is also destroyed in time. So basically, one understands that I don't want to lean on what is anitya, what is perishable. I don't want to emotionally lean on that for my peace, security, and happiness. Leaning on that is not a wise thing to do. And therefore, one has to distinguish what is anitya here. And then Vedanta presents Brahman as the only Nitya Vastu, the only thing that is imperishable. And therefore, if I really want this Purnatvam, this imperishable peace, security, and happiness, then I have to lean on Brahman for that, on the Nitya Vastu. So, this is why this Viveka is important. And Swamiji gives this example of doing Ganga Snanam. When we go to Haridwar or Rishikesh, for example, there the flow of the Ganga is very powerful. And if one just enters into it, one will get washed away. And therefore, what they have done is that they have attached these chains on the banks. The chains are firmly attached to the foundation of the banks. So one holds on to it, and then one enters into this flow, then one is not affected. So similarly, one has to hold on to something that is stable, something that is always there as a support. That is the idea here. Similarly, we can take another example of going in a bus where there are no seats. Everybody has to go standing. And we know how rash some of these bus drivers are. They just take turns at a very high speed. Now imagine if people are just standing. And imagine this person actually says, I have a support, this stool. Right? And one takes a stool into this bus. And one is holding on to the stool during this bus ride. Now he's sitting on the stool, and the bus driver takes a right turn. Then what happens? He gets pushed to the left and he bangs his head on the side. Similarly, when the bus driver takes a sudden left turn, he gets banged on the right. So the stool is not a stable support in such a situation. Holding on to it is an unwise thing to do. What should one hold on to instead? There are these things that are suspended from the top, and they provide some kind of firm support as the bus is moving around. So holding on to that is the wise thing to do, because that is firmly attached to the roof, which is firmly attached to the floor. So no matter how the bus moves, you are holding on to something that is firmly attached. So similarly, we say in life also, one has to find an anchor. One has to find this nitya vastu, and if one holds on to that, then no matter what changes happen, one is firmly grounded, unshakable. This is Viveka. And then we ask, is this aparoksha jnanam or paroksha jnanam? Because a jnani knows this with nitya vastu very well. And that is why he gets his the purnatvam. But the adhikari is not yet a jnani. So we say this is not the aparoksha jnanam of a jnani, but it is a form of paroksha jnanam, a form of indirect knowledge. Because this person, he has observed that every anitya vastu has a nitya adhishthanam. If you take pots, and pots can be created, and pots can be broken. So pots are anitya, they come and go. But in this world of pots, clay doesn't come and go. Clay is there before the pot comes into existence. Clay is there when the pot is there, and clay is there even after the pot breaks. So every anitya vastu has a nitya adhishthanam. This is an inviolable law. Therefore, this universe is anitya. Everything in this universe is anitya, but it should have a nitya adhishthanam. This person doesn't yet know what that nitya adhishthanam is, but it must be there. And therefore, this is the nitya anitya vastu. This is what makes him go in search of the nitya vastu. This is what makes him let go of the anitya vastu. So this is the Viveka. And we say that this Viveka is what leads to this Purushartha Nischaya. And what is the real Purushartha that I should be seeking? One requires this Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka for that. And we saw this mantra from Mundaka Upanishad some time back. Parikshya lokan karmachitan brahmanah nirvedamayat nasti akrita kritena tat vijnanatham sa gurumeva bhigachet samitpanihi shrotriyam brahmanishtam. So this mantra talks about a few things. It starts off with Parikshya lokan karmachitan. Parikshya. We are all familiar with this word called pariksha. Pariksha. Pariksha means examination, an exam. So pariksha here comes from the same root. And here it means having examined, having closely examined. Pariksha. Having examined what? Karmachitan lokan. All the experiences that are gained through karma. What are the experiences that are gained through karma? Arthaha, kamaha, and dharma. So having examined what this arthaha, kamaha, and dharma purusharthas, what they are giving me, having closely examined that, pariksha lokan karmachitam. Why did I get into these pursuits? Because I started off saying I am apurnaha. And I thought that I am going to somehow get rid of this apurnatvam by pursuing these artha, kama and dharma. But after all these years of pursuing it, after all these, in fact, lifetimes of pursuing it, what am I still saying? I am apurna. I have been basically running on a treadmill. So being able to see this is this Viveka. Why? Because everything that these Purusharthas give me, they are all anitya. Whatever I gain, it is anitya sukham. It only gives me some temporary happiness. And then what am I seeking? I am seeking nitya sukham. I am seeking purnatva. So these Purusharthas are incapable of giving me the nitya sukham that I am seeking. That is what an examination, a critical examination of my experiences should tell me. I was apurnaha, I am apurnaha. So any number of these experiences have not altered my sense of apurnatvam. And just as I am running on a treadmill, I am in the same place where I began. And we took the example of the broomstick. Imagine a broomstick. If I am decorating the broomstick with various ornaments, what is it? A highly decorated broomstick. Still remains a broomstick. Similarly, I thought that all this decoration of artha, kama and dharma is going to change this apurna I. But what am I now? I am still that apurna I who is highly decorated with artha, kama and dharma. I am still apurna. Pujya Swamiji says that I should be able to see my entire life. I should be able to see this example of the broomstick being decorated as an intimately close example to my own life. I am able to see this, then I am developing that Viveka. Nitya, Nitya Vastu Viveka. And there is some extrapolation now I have to do. That I have been doing this and I have remained apurna. If I continue to do this, I continue to remain apurna. This is the extrapolation. This is also the Nitya Vastu Viveka. What I am after is this Nitya Sukham, Nitya Vastu. It is not there in it. That is why it says, Nasti Akrita Kritena. Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan. Nirvedamayat Nasti Akrita Kritena. This extrapolation is there. That this what I am seeking is not there in these pursuits. And then Nirvedamayat. Nirvedamayat means one develops a dispassion for these other pursuits. So this is Vairagya. So Viveka is the seed qualification that brings about this Nirvedam Ayat, that brings about this dispassion for these other pursuits. And then Tad Vijnanartham Sa Gurumeva Bhigachet. Tad Vijnanartham, that Tad is the Nitya Vastu. In order to know that Nitya Vastu, one has to go to a Guru. So this one comes to again from this Viveka. This is Mumukshutvam. And then when one is committed to this pursuit, then one will also be committed to developing the disciplines that are required for the pursuit to be successful. Therefore, Shamadhi, Shakka, Sampattihi, all of these are a consequence of this Viveka. So a very important qualification. The first qualification. So now we come to the second qualification. Vairagyam. So let us look at the PDF again and the last shloka there, or the last passage there. is talking about Vairagyam. Viraga kaha iha swarga bhogeshu ichharahityam. So Viragaha is another name for this Vairagyam. You notice we said Vivekaha, but we are saying Vairagyam. That's because Viveka is a Akaranta Pullinga Shabda, the masculine gender. But we say Vairagya, we say Vairagyam, because it is Napumsaka Linga, the neuter gender. So another word for it is Viragaha. Again, Viragaha here is Pullinga. That's why it is Viragaha. Both are synonymous, Viragaha and Vairagyam. So this comes from this Ranj Dhatu. Ranj Dhatu. So what does this Ranj Dhatu mean? What does this verb that's derived from the Ranj Dhatu mean? It means to be attracted to be involved in. So Ragaha, the word that comes from this Ranj Dhatu, Ragaha, that means longing, longing for something. Ragaha. So Viragaha essentially means absence of this longing, absence of this clinging to, absence of this dependence on, absence of some kind of, emotional leaning on something. So this is Viragaha, that is Vairagyam. So Viragaha, Vairagyam, as we said, arises out of Vivekaha, arises out of understanding that something is anitya, but what I am looking for is nitya. What I'm leaning on is perishable. What I'm looking for is the imperishable. So this Viveka leads to Vairagyam. So what is the connection between something being anitya and the rise of this Vairagyam? What is the connection? As we said, there is a general understanding that holding on to something that is unstable is not a good idea. But then we say that whatever is anitya is mixed with these three doshas that we have seen earlier. Dukkha mishritatvam. Whatever is anitya, it will perish one day. And it results in sorrow. Dukkha mishritatvam. Atriptikaratvam. Whatever is anitya, because it is unstable, because it is unreliable, because it is perishable, it causes sorrow. It leaves me apurnaha. So atriptikaratvam. And bandhakatvam, it makes me more and more dependent on things that are unreliable, uncontrollable, unsustainable. And then my life becomes like a roller coaster ride because I'm depending on so many things that are all unstable. So I have to go through various emotions like helplessness, anger, frustration, depression, in short, samsara. And then I'll constantly be in fear that whatever I am depending on, it will go away, it might go away. More dependence I have, it leads to fear. So helplessness, anger, frustration, depression, fear. So all of these are expressions of samsara. So as Swamiji says, if you have to make a list of two things, one that makes you happy and one that makes you sad, he says, don't bother making two lists. Just make one list. The list of things that we say will make us happy, the same things will one day make us sad. Why? Because it is invariably something or the other in the world that is anitya. Dukkha mishritatvam. mixed with salt. So everything in this world is like this shoe that bites. It gives me some level of comfort, but then it also bites me. It leaves me apurna. So this is the connection between something being anitya and seeing it as anitya and the rise of Vairagya. So now the passage talks about iha swarga bhogeshu. So iha bhoga and swarga bhoga, ichha rahityam. So understanding what is this iha bhoga is basically arthaha, kamaha and dharmaha, from which I expect arthaha and kamaha in this world. That is iha bhoga. So all of these have these doshas that we talked about. So seeing that they have these doshas is viveka. But then not leaning on them, not depending on them is Vairagya. And not dedicating one's life to these pursuits. Understanding that these pursuits are not, they don't deserve to be the primary goal of my life. That is Vairagya. Understanding that the Nitya Vastu should really be the primary goal of my life. Before I come to that, I have to let go of these anitya vastus being the primary goal of my life. So deprioritizing them in my life and prioritizing the nitya vastu. That is Vairagya. Some ways showing them what their proper place is. Because if I am excessively dependent on this, they start to call the shots. Then showing them that you don't deserve to be the primary goal. That is downgrading them somehow. Showing them their right place, that something else should occupy a bigger place in my life. That is the Nitya Vastu. So, does this mean I totally give up these pursuits? So, here we are saying that it is not that one totally eliminates these pursuits. They may have some place in one's life, especially in a sadhaka who is not entirely clear, who is still growing in the qualifications. But then even then, they are not the goal. They can be reduced to a means to the goal. For example, if we take a materialist, for a materialist, the world is the means and the world is the goal. Artha and kamaha are the goal for him. And he uses just things in the world to accomplish that. For a religious materialist, still the goal is artha and kamaha. But then he says that I want to make use of Ishvara, I want to make use of Dharma for accomplishing Artha and Kama. So God and Dharma, Veda, etc., they become the means for accomplishing things in the world. So the world is still the goal, but God, Ishvara, becomes the means. But for a religiously spiritual person, as we saw, he reverses this. He says, Ishvara, Brahman, this Nitya Vastu needs to become my goal, not the means. And then the world becomes a means. So for this religiously spiritual person, how does he use the world as a means? So he engages, as we said, in Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga requires engagement in the world in order to grow, in order to develop these qualifications. Why? For the pursuit of Vedanta. Why? In order to gain this Purnatvam, in order to gain the Nitya Vastu. So the world is not an end, but the world becomes a means for a karma yogi. So this reduction of artha, kamaha, dharmaha, etc. to be a means in order to gain the qualifications that makes one come to Vedanta, that makes one come to the Nitya Vastu. This making them a means is Vairagya. One sees that that is not by end goal, but these can be a means to the end goal. The real commitment one has is to Jnanam and Moksha alone, the final goal. And all these one sees as just a means to the final goal. So this growing out of Artha, Kamaha and Dharmaha is Vairagyam. We are all familiar with the example of a child who's playing with balloons. So when the balloon is the goal for the child has not grown out of the balloon. The child considers the balloon to be a very important accomplishment and he cries whenever he sees this balloon, that he wants it. But now when this same child is 25 years old, he recognizes there are more important pursuits in life. He has grown out of this balloon desire. Similarly, a seeker, an adhikari, he grows out of this compulsive pursuit of artha, kamaha and dharma. Because he recognizes that there's a bigger pursuit that is more important. And therefore, everything else is shown its right place. Now, what about this Swarga Bhoga that this is talking about? In Swarga, it's a beautiful place. And all of these enjoyments are available there in plenty. There is no such, immediately perceivable dukkha there. So why not make Swarga a goal? And say that an adhikari has vairagyam even towards Swarga Bhoga. Because, as Pujya Swamiji points out, Swarga is nothing but a form of religious tourism. One may go to some beautiful place in, an abroad tour or something where everything is very nice and all this, one enjoys it. But then one cannot live there forever because one is depleting money. When the money is over, one has to come back. Similarly, one may go to some place abroad, but when the tourism visa ends, one has to come back. There is no permanent citizenship or green card one can get as a tourist. Similarly, we say that this currency for Swarga Bhoga is one's own punya. The punya that one gathers with an intention of artha and kamaha, that can lead one, with a lot of punyam, it can lead one to Swarga Bhoga, but one is depleting that even as one is living there. And once the punyam depletes, one is chucked out. So it is anitya. One should be able to see even Swarga as anitya. Kshine punye matya lokam vishanti. Tetam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punye matya lokam vishanti. Having enjoyed the swargaloka, once the punyam is exhausted, one has to come back to matya loka. In the world of the mortals. This is the Bhagavad Gītā. The Chandogya Upanishad says, Tadyatha iha karmachito lokaha kshiyate evam amutra punyachito lokaha kshiyate. Just as we see that karmas, whatever experiences gained through karma, are exhausted in this world, just as they are anitya, even this swarga, amutra loka means swarga loka, gets exhausted. One has to leave that place once one's punya is exhausted. So it is anitya. And therefore, an adhikari doesn't get tempted by this pursuit also. He says that is anitya. What I am seeking is nitya vastu. One who has vairagyam doesn't get into this pursuit. Because one is able to see that fundamentally the problem is ignorance. And the adhyasa that is caused by the ignorance and the samsara that is a result of the adhyasa. I am ignorant. That makes me say I am apurnaha, and that makes me pursue purnatvam, which causes all this samsara, artha, kama, and dharma pursuit. Now, this problem doesn't fundamentally end if I go to Swargaloka. It is like taking some scenic route. Just because I took a scenic route, the fundamental problem doesn't change. I'm still going around in circles involving the scenic route. And therefore, one who has Vairagyam, for him Swargaloka is also not the goal. In Vairagyam, Pujya Swamiji points this out, is objectivity. There is something called Shobhana Adhyasa, Shobhana Adhyasa, Shobhana Adhyasa or Shobhana Adhyasa. So what this means is giving something more value than it actually has. So there are two types of adhyasa, as we have seen. Superimposition, two types of superimposition are there. One is one which we have discussed, mistaking a rope for a snake. There I am superimposing some object on the rope that it is not. That is this normal adhyasa that we are familiar with. But then there is the Shobhana Adhyasa, which means I'm not mistaking one thing for another thing there, but I'm superimposing a value that the thing doesn't possess. So when I have such a superimposition of a value that the object does not possess or that person does not possess, then I am imposing a subjective value on it. There is subjectivity. When there is more subjectivity, then there is less objectivity. And there is less vairagyam. So vairagyam means maximum objectivity. When I see a thing, I see a thing for what it is and not more than that. For example, we have this idea that money can give security. Now, money can certainly buy a lot of things, and money can give some economic freedom. But this idea that money can give security, and therefore I go on accumulating it, thinking that I will become secure through it, that is Shobhana Adhyasa. We have seen that money, if it is kept somewhere under the mattress, for example, termites can eat it. If money is kept in the bank, inflation can eat it. And if money is kept in the market in so-called securities, the market can tank. These so-called securities are not really secure. So money doesn't have any inherent security itself. But this idea that money can give me security, the more and more I have of it, this is Shobhana Adhyasa. It means there is a lack of Vairagyam. It doesn't mean money is useless. Money is certainly required to some extent in the world. But then this idea, a compulsive pursuit of it, is what we are talking about. One has to deprioritize such a compulsive pursuit. The same thing about objects. An object can give me happiness. You have seen this before. That if an object had something inherent called happiness to it, in it, then the same object must give happiness uniformly to everybody. But this parikaya sambar, bitter gourd sambar, one person relishes it, but one person says, I don't want this. It makes him unhappy. There is nothing inherent like happiness in an object. It is a subjective thing. And similarly, this idea that if an object had inherent happiness, it should continually give happiness to this person. But then one experiences boredom, there is diminishing returns. If the object had something inherent called happiness, it should continually give me happiness. Why does boredom set in? Why is there a diminishing return over a period of time? Because the object doesn't have anything inherently called happiness. It is a subjective value that is being superimposed on it. And where is this happiness coming from? We have seen this example of the dog chewing on a bone. The dog chews on a dry bone. The bone is bone dry. That's why there's a term called bone dry. The bone has nothing in it. When the dog chews it, the bone cuts its own mouth. And that leads to a bleeding in its mouth. And then it ends up sucking its own blood. And then it mistakenly attributes that to this bone. And therefore it is very excited when it sees a bone, and then it continuously chews on it for hours altogether. But it is a mistake to think that the bone is giving it that happiness in the form of the blood. But we make that same mistake the dog makes. We say this object makes me happy, but the object inherently doesn't make me happy when the desire for the object is accomplished. In that brief period of time when a desire in the mind is accomplished, the mind is in a very sattvic state. In the desire being accomplished, the mind is free of the desire. The mind is in a state where it is not hankering after something. So in such a state, the Atmananda is reflected. In such a mind, the Atmananda, the happiness that really belongs to me, that gets reflected in such a mind, and I wrongly attribute it to this object. So saying that the object has got inherent happiness is Shobhana, Dhyasa, lack of Vairagyam. A Vairagi sees that nothing in this world has got this peace, security and happiness to offer to me. Nothing. Only the Nitya Vastu can give me what I want. This peace, security, happiness, this lasting peace, security, happiness, this Purnatvam can only be obtained through the Nitya Vastu. And therefore, one develops this Vairagya. And similarly for relationships also. That the idea that some relationship can give me security and happiness is a Shobhana Dhyasa. The other person in the relationship is thinking the same thing about me. That through this person I will get peace, security and happiness. That means the person doesn't think that the person has it to offer. That is why that person is also in the relationship. So there is nothing in the world, no object, no relationship that can give me this peace, security and happiness that is lasting, that is nitya. This clearly seeing this is objectivity, this is Vairagyam. Then Vairagyam is also this absence of binding raga dvesha. When I think that my life is empty without something or somebody, if I have this kind of an idea in my mind, then that means there is a binding raga. Basically, it is also lack of objectivity. I am devaluing myself and overvaluing something else. What is the problem with this binding ragas and dveshas? Binding likes and dislikes. So what happens is if I have these binding likes and dislikes, then the emotional condition of my mind is determined by these objects or beings. When I have a binding liking, a binding raga for something, then that object binds me by its absence. When that object is not there, then there is disturbance in the mind. And similarly, if I have a binding dvesha also, if I have a binding hatred for something, that is, as long as this thing is there, my life cannot be incomplete. I have to somehow get rid of that. If such a feeling is also there, that's a binding dvesha. Then such an object of or person binds me by their presence. They cause mental disturbance. Moreover, the more binding ragas and dveshas one has, it causes worry, it causes preoccupation of the mind. Such a mind cannot be available for study and contemplation. And as we have seen earlier, this can cause other things also, a very strong binding raga, etc. We saw that sequence in the Bhagavad Gītā. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangas teshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate. क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृति विभ्रमः स्मृति भ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशः बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. So this strong raga causes kamaha, a strong desire that can result in krodha if it's obstructed. Krodhat, bhavati sammoha. It can result in delusion, sammohat, smriti vibhramaha. That can result in one's viveka being neutralized in such a mind. It doesn't arise at the right place to say that what I am pursuing is something even wrong, perhaps. Therefore, these binding ragas and dveshas have to be neutralized. It is very important. But a person can have ragas and dveshas that are non-binding. It is okay to have ragas and dveshas that are not binding. They become preferences. For example, uh, a jnani who is South Indian may say, I prefer idli and dosa for a meal. But if it is not there also, it's okay. So one may have a preference that is non-binding, and such non-binding preferences don't cause mental disturbance. This is the binding ragas and dveshas that one has to neutralize. So finally, this vairagyam is not just about things that I have to attain, developing, a mindset where one is not pursuing them, clinging to them, longing for them, depending on them. But even things that I already possess. So, an understanding that a preparedness of the mind to lose everything that is losable. Now, what is losable? Everything in this world is losable, and anything that I possess is also losable. Why? Because it is anitya. It's fundamentally anitya. It is losable, and therefore I should not cling to them. So this mindset, this preparedness of mind, that anything losable, I am prepared to lose it. Preparedness to lose the losable. This is also an indication of Vairagya. So we looked at Vairagya today from various different angles. And it is a very important qualification, as we have seen. In the next class, we will take up one of the other qualifications, Samadhi, Shatka, Sampattihi, Mumukshutvam. We may complete this in the next class, let us see. With this, I will conclude now. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. If there are any comments or questions, we can take them up for a few minutes.
So, just I want to ask one thing. This Vairagya, and I mean, we are trying to achieve that using Viveka, right?
Mm.
And so, I mean, we understand that this is Nitya Anityam, but still we are not willing to give it up so easily.
Mm.
And is that because of the mala? And I mean, is it that is where the work is sadhana has to be done?
Yes. So basically, if we find that, for any of these qualifications in general, so what Vedanta is describing is um, are these qualifications, and their presence leads to the benefit that is proportional to their presence. So one may not have all the qualifications in full measure in the very beginning. It is very normal, right? So that is not something that should make one judge oneself as being not, somebody who should pursue Vedanta. So some may have, for example, a good measure of some qualification, but may need more work in other areas. What we say is that if there is some qualification in a reasonable measure, that itself will lead to the development of the other qualifications also. Um, Typically, there has to be Viveka in the sequence. It is said that that is what comes first, and that leads to the other things. So one has to try to develop this Viveka. And also, this Vairagya, the way of developing it is dosha darshanam, seeing the defects. That is the means for developing the Vairagya. And one has to learn from life's experience also. Basically, sometimes, if one has had a very pleasurable life so far, then one will have more difficulty in developing some of these qualifications unless one has done the sadhana in earlier janmas. One has had a very smooth life and everything is going well, you see. Such a person, um, it is quite possible that such a person may not come to Vedanta. So one may have to have some shocks, some amount of some ups and downs in life for one to even discern this problem of samsara. Therefore, one has to this one has to go through life in order to develop some of these qualifications. But at the same time, it is not necessary that one has to have first-hand experience of everything oneself. One can also learn from the suffering of others. By seeing that one has gone through this kind of an experience that resulted in suffering, that itself, I should be able to apply that to my own life also. So it is not necessary to pursue every artha and every kama in order to gain vairagya. Some I gain through my own experience, some I gain by learning from others' experiences.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So anything
Yes,
else?
yes, thank you so much, Satyanji.
Yes.
And the statement you made about Vairagya, that you said the preparedness to lose a losable thing was so insightful. So
Yes.
if
That
only
is,
each one of
yeah.
us can do the manana on this, it would have a lot of impact. Thank you so much for this unfolding, Satyanji. Each one
Actually,
of
that
us,
is
we are very grateful.
one of the statements that Swamiji makes now and then. He reminds us that one has to have this preparedness to lose everything that is losable. So shall we conclude then? Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari
Hari
Om.
Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om,
Hari Om.
Namaste. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari
Hari
Om.
Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.